The shuttle descended through the swirling mists of Zaloria, its engines humming softly against the backdrop of a thick, verdant jungle. Dr. Elias Reed checked the coordinates on his console, ensuring the landing site was clear. Beside him, his colleague and fellow researcher, Dr. Marcus Flynn, peered out of the window with an expression mixed with awe and impatience. This planet is untouched by any known civilization, Elias. Can you believe we're among the first humans to set foot here? Marcus said, his voice tinged with excitement. Elias smiled, feeling a surge of anticipation. It's not just about setting foot, Marcus. It's about understanding and preserving. Let's keep our impact minimal. As the shuttle touched down gently on a bed of thick moss, the two men quickly gathered their equipment. They stepped out into the humid air of Zaloria, the sounds of unknown creatures echoing through the trees. All right, let's set up the base camp over there, near that clearing. We need a solid perimeter before we start exploring, Marcus directed, pointing towards a nearby area that looked relatively flat. They worked in tandem, unloading gear and setting up tents. The campsite soon took shape, equipped with all the necessities for their extended stay. As they worked, Elias couldn't shake off the feeling that they were being watched. He scanned the dense foliage, catching fleeting glimpses of movement. Marcus, you ever feel like the jungle is observing us as much as we're observing it? Elias asked, half joking. Always, Marcus laughed. But remember, we're not here to disturb. We're here to learn. Keep your sensors ready, and let's not jump to conclusions about what we think we see. With the camp set, they ventured deeper into the jungle, sensors and cameras at the ready. The undergrowth was thick, forcing them to take their time as they made their way through the lush greenery. Suddenly, Marcus stopped, gesturing silently towards a large shadow a few meters away. Elias followed his gaze and saw it. A massive creature, lying still among the ferns. Its scales shimmered with an iridescent quality, and it appeared to be injured. The beast's breathing was labored, its sides heaving gently with each breath. Is that what I think it is? Marcus whispered, a mix of concern and fascination in his voice. It's hurt, Elias noted, taking a step closer. We need to help it. Are you sure? We know nothing about it. For all we know, it could be dangerous, Marcus countered, but his concern for the creature was evident. Elias set his jaw, his decision firm. We can't just leave it here to die. Let's approach slowly, monitor its reactions. Together, they approached the alien beast with caution. Elias reached into his bag, pulling out a medical scanner. He began assessing the creature's injuries from a safe distance, while Marcus kept a careful watch on its movements. It seems to have a fractured limb and some external wounds. It might have fallen from somewhere, Elias murmured, reading the scanner's display. Here, Marcus said, passing a medical kit to Elias. Do what you can. I'll keep an eye out for any signs of aggression. As Elias treated the creature's wounds, applying bandages and a splint, the beast stirred slightly, its large eyes opening to observe them. There was a depth in its gaze, an intelligence that was unmistakable. We're here to help, Elias said softly, as if it could understand him. We won't hurt you. The creature watched them, its breathing easing as Elias administered pain relief. Marcus looked on, a mix of admiration and relief on his face. Looks like you made a new friend, he joked, but his eyes were warm. Elias chuckled, wiping his brow. Or a very large patient. Either way, we did good today. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the Zalorian jungle, Elias and Marcus returned to their camp, their minds full of what they had encountered. This mission was about more than science. It was about compassion. Today was a good day, Marcus said as they settled in for the night. Let's see what tomorrow brings. Elias nodded, his thoughts on the creature they had left behind, now stabilized. Tomorrow, we learn even more, he replied, hopeful and curious about the wonders Zaloria held. The early morning sun filtered through the dense canopy of Zaloria, casting a kaleidoscope of light on the forest floor as Elias and Marcus made their way back to the clearing where they had left the injured creature. Elias carried his medical bag, while Marcus had his camera slung over his shoulder, ready to document any new developments. As they approached the site, They found the creature, Calum, as Elias had named him, awake and more alert than the previous day. The creature's deep, intelligent eyes followed their every move, a gentle hum emanating from him. Vibrations felt more than heard. "Looks like he's doing better today," Marcus noted, keeping his voice low and soothing. Elias nodded, setting down his bag and pulling out his scanner. "Let's see how your night was, big guy," he said to Calum, moving slowly to not startle him. The creature watched Elias approach, its body still but eyes curious. Elias gently placed the scanner near Calum, checking the readings. "His vitals are stable, and the pain meds seem to be helping," Elias reported, looking over to Marcus with a relieved grin. "That's great news," Marcus responded, capturing the moment with his camera. "Do you think he understands us?" Elias paused, considering the question. "I think he understands more than we might expect." His responses seemed too precise to be coincidental. Curious, Marcus moved a bit closer, his tone friendly. "Hey, Calum, if you understand what we're saying, could you blink twice for us?" To their astonishment, Calum's large eyes blinked slowly, twice. "Wow!" Marcus breathed out, his excitement palpable. "This is incredible, Elias. We're communicating with an alien life form." Energized by this breakthrough, Elias spent the next few hours teaching Calum basic signs they could use for communication. "This is for yes," Elias demonstrated, nodding his head. Calum mimicked the motion awkwardly. "And this is for no," Elias continued, shaking his head. Again, Calum attempted the gesture. As the day wore on, the trio established a rudimentary form of communication. Marcus jotted down notes and sketched diagrams, documenting their interactions and Calum's responses. "Think of what this means," Marcus said, pausing in his note-taking. "We could learn so much from him about this planet and possibly even his species." Elias looked thoughtful. "Yes, and we need to think about his future too. We can't just leave him here once he's fully recovered." "That's a conversation for another day," Marcus replied. "For now, let's focus on what we can learn." They spent the rest of the day with Calum, learning about his diet and environment through their shared sign language. Calum seemed eager to interact, his hums and vibrations becoming more frequent as they established a rhythm to their conversation. As evening approached, Elias and Marcus prepared to head back to camp. "We'll be back tomorrow, Calum." "Rest well," Elias said, packing up his medical supplies. Calum hummed lowly, the sound almost melodic, and watched as the two men walked away. Back at the camp, Elias and Marcus discussed their plan for the coming days. "We need to monitor his recovery closely, but I think we should also start mapping the area. There could be more clues about his species or others like him," Marcus suggested. "Agreed," Elias said, his mind racing with possibilities. "And we should start compiling a report? If he's truly the last of his kind, this becomes not just a scientific expedition, but a conservation effort." That night, as they sat by the campfire, the significance of their discovery weighed on them. They were not just explorers or scientists. They were now guardians of a potentially lost species, connected by shared curiosity and a desire to bridge the gap between worlds. Their journey had taken a profound turn, and both felt the weight and wonder of what lay ahead. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, Elias and Marcus approached Calum's resting place with fresh supplies and new ideas for enhancing their communication. Today, they brought a portable whiteboard, hoping it would aid in teaching Calum more complex concepts. "Morning, Calum," Marcus greeted, his voice carrying a cheerful tune. "We got something new to try today." The creature stirred, its vibrant eyes focusing on the whiteboard. Elias explained as he drew simple shapes. "These are symbols that represent objects and ideas. This circle here," he pointed, "represents the sun." Calum watched intently, then with a tentative motion, mimicked the drawing on the ground with his claw. A rough circle took shape, causing both men to exchange excited glances. "Brilliant!" Elias exclaimed. "You're a quick learner, Calum." Marcus documented the interaction, his camera clicking softly. "Imagine what we could achieve if we could really talk with him." Encouraged, they spent the morning expanding Calum's vocabulary, introducing symbols for water, tree, and danger. Each new word seemed to spark a light of understanding in Calum's eyes, his enthusiasm growing with each lesson. After a short break, Elias ventured a new topic. Let's try something about feelings. This, he said, drawing a smiley face, means happy. Calum studied the symbol. Then, to their astonishment, he gently traced a similar expression next to Elias's drawing, the corners of his mouth attempting to turn upwards. Seems like you're not just big. You're also smart and sensitive, Marcus noted, a broad smile on his face. Does this mean you're happy now? The creature hummed, the sound vibratory and warm, echoing slightly around them. As the day wore on, they introduced more complex concepts like friend and help. Marcus observed, we're not just teaching him. He's showing us how he thinks and feels. There's a mutual exchange happening here. Elias nodded, deeply moved. It's more than I hoped for. We're actually making a real connection. Their work paused as a sudden rain shower swept through, the drops drumming rhythmically against the leaves. They took shelter under a large tree, sitting close to Calum. Rain, Elias said, pointing upwards. Calum felt the droplets with his hand, then mimicked the symbol for water they had taught him earlier. It's like he's piecing the world together in his own way, Marcus said, watching the creature with a mixture of fascination and respect. Exactly. It's not just about survival for him. There's a curiosity there, a desire to understand and be understood, Elias added, his voice thoughtful. As the rain ceased, a vivid rainbow arched across the sky. Marcus pointed it out, explaining, that's called a rainbow, Calum. It's a natural spectacle. Curious, Calum gazed at the colors, then at the whiteboard, as if wondering how to draw it. Let's show him, Elias suggested. Together, they sketched the arc and explained the concept of light and water creating colors. Calum's attempt at drawing the rainbow was clumsy, but recognizable. The creature seemed pleased, his hums a gentle backdrop to their cheers of encouragement. The day ended with them teaching Calum how to say goodbye. Elias demonstrated the wave, and with a slow, deliberate motion, Calum copied. Goodbye, Calum. We'll be back tomorrow, Elias said, feeling a bond that went beyond words. Marcus added, take care, big guy, and keep practicing. They left the clearing as the sun dipped below the horizon, the sky painted in hues that matched the rainbow they had shared. On the walk back to camp, neither man spoke much. Both were lost in thought, contemplating the extraordinary bridge being built between human and alien. That night, as they prepared for sleep, Marcus broke the silence. Do you think we're ready to introduce him to more abstract concepts? Like home or family? Elias considered, his eyes on the stars. I think he might already be getting there. Today felt like we were all becoming a sort of family. Yeah, Marcus agreed softly. A very unusual, very remarkable family. The sun had just crested the horizon when Elias and Marcus made their way back to the clearing. Today, they were accompanied by Dr. Leo Barnett, a linguist whose expertise in Xena communication could provide new insights into their interactions with Calum. Morning, Elias, Marcus. I've reviewed your notes and videos. You've made incredible progress with Calum. I'm eager to see how he communicates, Leo said, adjusting the straps on his backpack as they walked. Glad to have you on board, Leo. Calum's picking up concepts faster than we expected, Elias replied, leading the way through the dense foliage. As they arrived at the clearing, Calum's form rose slightly in recognition. His eyes brightened, taking in a new face curiously. Calum, this is Leo. He's here to help us understand each other better, Elias introduced, gesturing towards Leo. Hello, Calum. It's an honor to meet you, Leo said, stepping forward with a gentle nod. Calum responded with a low hum and a cautious nod, seemingly mimicking Leo's greeting. Today, we thought we'd try something a bit different, Marcus chimed in, unpacking some equipment. We're going to see if Calum can understand more complex ideas. Leo unpacked a device designed to analyze vocal patterns and frequencies. I brought a phonetic synthesizer. It might help us bridge the gap between his vocalizations and ours. Elias was setting up the whiteboard. Let's start with something simple. Calum, this symbol, he pointed at a drawing of their camp, represents home. Calum looked at the drawing, then at the surrounding jungle, and back to the symbol. He vocalized a series of soft sounds, different from his usual hums. Leo's device immediately started analyzing the sounds. Fascinating. He's using a combination of tones. It's almost musical. Can you replicate those sounds with your synthesizer, Leo? Marcus asked, watching the readouts on the screen. Let's try. Leo adjusted the device, and soon, a similar series of tones echoed from the speakers. Caleb's head tilted, listening intently. Then he repeated the sounds, this time adding a slight variation. He's correcting us, Leo exclaimed, his voice a mix of surprise and delight. Seems like he's quite the linguist himself, Elias joked, then turned to Caleb. How about we show you more about home? They spent the next few hours engaged in this linguistic dance, with Leo tweaking the synthesizer and Caleb eagerly participating in the exchange. They introduced more concepts, like family, safety, and community, each represented by symbols and sounds. As the session progressed, Caleb began using the synthesizer's tones to initiate communication himself, expressing curiosity about objects Leo had brought, like a map of the stars and a model of a DNA helix. Looks like he's not just learning. He's teaching us too, Marcus noted, documenting every interaction. He's got an understanding of complex scientific concepts. Yes, and he's expressing them in his own way. This is groundbreaking, Leo added, his eyes never leaving the readouts. As the day drew to a close, Elias proposed a new activity. Caleb, would you show us something about your world? Anything you think is important? Caleb paused, his gaze wandering around the clearing. Then, he began drawing in the dirt with his claw. He sketched what looked like a complex network of roots or vines. This could represent the ecosystem or the connectivity of life here on Zaloria, Elias speculated, intrigued by the intricate patterns. Or perhaps it's about interdependence, Leo suggested, observing the connections between the lines. Either way, it's clear he's got a deep understanding of his environment, Marcus concluded, still filming. As they prepared to leave, Caleb vocalized a series of melodic tones, longer and more elaborate than before. Leo recorded them, promising to analyze them back at the camp. Goodbye, Caleb. We'll continue tomorrow, Elias said, feeling more connected to this alien life form than ever. Yeah, take care, big guy, Marcus added, giving a casual wave. Caleb responded with a hum and a wave of his own, the gesture now familiar and warm. On their way back to the camp, the three men discussed their plans for further research. This could change how we approach communication with non-human intelligence forever, Leo mused, excited by the day's results. And to think, it all started because we cared, Elias reflected, looking back at the clearing where Caleb remained. Yes, Marcus agreed, a remarkable day indeed. Who knows what tomorrow will bring? The morning was cool and crisp as Elias, Marcus, and Leo made their way back to the clearing where Caleb awaited them. Today, they planned to delve deeper into Caleb's understanding of his environment and perhaps uncover more about his species' culture. Today, let's focus on Caleb's social structures, if any, Elias suggested as they walked through the dense underbrush. We know he's intelligent and empathetic. There might be more to learn about how he interacted with others of his kind. Marcus nodded, checking the batteries in his camera. I'm also curious about his reactions to artifacts from his own culture. I brought along some objects we found nearby that might be familiar to him. Leo adjusted the strap of his bag, which contained the phonetic synthesizer and additional recording equipment. I'm interested in capturing more of his vocal patterns. The variations he showed us yesterday were fascinating. There might be a whole language waiting to be discovered. As they approached the clearing, they found Caleb sitting upright, appearing to be waiting for them. His greeting was a soft, melodious hum, which Leo immediately began to record. Good morning, Caleb, Elias greeted warmly. We brought some things to share with you today. Caleb's eyes lit up, and he hummed inquisitively as Marcus carefully laid out several objects on a cloth on the ground. Among them were intricately carved stones and what appeared to be fragments of a ceremonial tool. This, Marcus said, pointing to a stone with symmetrical notches, was found buried not far from here. Does it mean anything to you? Caleb extended a limb, gently touching the stone. He hummed a series of low tones. Then, using a stick, he began to draw in the dirt. He sketched what seemed to be a gathering of figures, each marked by similar notches. He might be telling us about gatherings or rituals, Leo interpreted, his voice filled with excitement. These markings could signify individuals or roles within the group. Elias took notes, then asked, Calum, were these gatherings happy occasions? He repeated the symbol for happiness they had taught Calum. The creature paused, then drew a circle around the figures, adding what looked like rays of sunlight emanating from the circle. The mood of the sketch suggested positivity. It seems like these were significant, joyful gatherings, Elias concluded, sharing a look of amazement with his colleagues. Encouraged by this interaction, Leo played back a series of tones they had synthesized from the previous day's recordings. Do these sounds mean anything specific to you, Calum? Calum listened intently, then vocalized a response that mirrored the pattern but with additional variations at the end. Leo recorded this eagerly, his gears turning. He's modifying the language, adding context or perhaps emotion. As the morning progressed, they introduced more symbols and sounds, each time Calum engaging more eagerly. His ability to express complex ideas through their rudimentary shared language was growing rapidly. Let's ask him about this tool, Marcus suggested, picking up a fragmented object that looked like it might have been part of a hunting or farming implement. Elias held it out to Calum. Did you use this for food gathering or something else? Calum's touch was hesitant at first. He then drew a line from the object to the image of the gathering, adding symbols for plants and what appeared to be animals. It could be a tool used in preparing for these events, maybe hunting or harvesting, Marcus theorized, zooming in on the sketch with his camera. Yeah, it's starting to paint a picture of a community reliant on each other and their environment, Leo added, overlaying Calum's tones with the images he sketched. As the session drew to a close, Elias reflected on their progress. We're not just learning about Calum. We're uncovering the story of his entire species. True, Marcus agreed as he packed up his equipment. Every object, every sound is a piece of the puzzle. Calum, who had been attentively following their conversation, suddenly hummed a new, complex series of tones. It was a poignant, melodious sound that resonated in the clearing. Leo caught Elias's eye. Did we just hear a form of gratitude? Elias nodded, deeply moved. I think so. Calum, we're grateful too. Thank you for sharing with us. They left the clearing that day with a profound sense of connection and responsibility. The story of Calum's species was gradually coming to life, not just through objects and sketches, but through the very real voice of one of its last members. The forest was alive with the sounds of mourning as Elias, Marcus, and Leo made their way back to Calum's clearing. The trio carried with them a mixture of excitement and determination. Each day spent with Calum brought new discoveries and challenges. But today, they planned to push the boundaries of their communication even further. Elias, Marcus began as they trekked through the dense foliage. I've been thinking, if we're uncovering this much about Calum's culture, do you think there's a chance we might find records, maybe artifacts that tell more of the story? Elias adjusted the strap on his pack. It's possible, but I think the biggest treasure is Calum himself. He's not just a piece of history. He's alive and evolving. Leo nodded, stepping over a fallen log. Agreed. And if he's the last of his kind, everything we learn from him carries even greater weight. But we should also be prepared for what that might mean for him and for us. When they arrived at the clearing, Calum was already there, humming softly. His tone seemed different this morning, more deliberate. He watched them approach, his large eyes reflecting the early sunlight. Good morning, Calum, Elias greeted, smiling warmly. We're glad to see you. Calum responded with a low hum and a deliberate gesture, a wave that mirrored their own. Hey, big guy, Marcus said, unpacking his camera. Ready to teach us something new today? Leo set up his phonetic synthesizer and whiteboard. Let's see if we can go deeper today, Calum. Maybe you can tell us more about your world. Elias knelt beside Calum, holding up a drawing they had worked on the previous day. It showed a scene with figures that Calum had described as gatherings. Calum, can you tell us more about this? Calum studied the drawing for a moment, then began to hum. The sound was melodic, almost like a song, and carried a rhythm that seemed deliberate. Leo quickly started recording. Wait, Leo said, his eyes lighting up. He's not just vocalizing. This could be a narrative, a story. Marcus leaned in, fascinated. You think he's telling us what happened in these gatherings? Elias nodded. It fits. Calum, keep going. We want to hear your story. Calum continued, occasionally pausing to draw symbols in the dirt. The patterns he created seemed to represent movements and relationships between the figures. Elias recognized one symbol, a circle surrounded by smaller circles, that Calum had used previously to depict the concept of unity. He's telling us about connections, Elias said, his voice filled with wonder. These gatherings weren't just events. They were about relationships, about belonging. Leo added, the tonal variations in his hums. They're rich with emotion. It's like he's reliving the experience. As Calum finished his vocalization, he turned to the three men and tilted his head, as if waiting for their response. That was incredible, Calum, Elias said, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you for sharing that with us. Marcus stepped forward, showing Calum a new object, a small shard of what looked like an ancient tablet. Calum, does this mean anything to you? Calum took the shard carefully, examining it with a keen eye. He hummed a few tones, then began sketching in the dirt. What emerged was a detailed image of what looked like a large communal space, surrounded by figures and marked by intricate patterns. He's describing a place, Marcus said, documenting the sketch. Maybe a temple or a hall where these gatherings happened. Leo pointed to the shard. This could be a piece of that structure. If we can find it, we might uncover even more about his people. Elias looked at Calum, his voice soft. Calum, is this place nearby? Calum paused, then made a series of gestures that seemed to indicate distance. His hums took on a guiding tone, rising and falling as if to describe terrain. He's trying to show us how to get there, Leo realized, excitement creeping into his voice. The three men exchanged glances, the weight of the moment sinking in. They were being invited to learn not just from Calum, but from the remnants of his world. Let's prepare, Elias said firmly. Calum, if you're ready, we'll follow you. Calum stood, his large form moving with surprising grace. He turned and began to walk, his movements deliberate but unhurried. The men followed, their senses heightened with anticipation. As they moved deeper into the forest, the terrain grew more rugged. Calum occasionally stopped to ensure they were keeping up, his hums guiding them through unfamiliar paths. He's leading us somewhere significant, Marcus said, his voice hushed. You can feel it. After what felt like hours, they arrived at a clearing. In the center stood the remains of an ancient structure, overgrown with vines, but still majestic. Calum stopped, his hums becoming softer, almost reverent. This must be it, Leo said, his voice barely above a whisper. Elias approached the structure, placing a hand on one of the weathered stones. Calum, is this the place you told us about? Calum nodded, his hums filled with a deep, resonant tone. The men began exploring the ruins, documenting everything they could. Calum stayed close, watching as they uncovered fragments of his world. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the ruins, Elias looked at Calum and said, "We're honored you shared this with us. We'll do everything we can to preserve it." Calum hummed softly, his tone carrying a sense of contentment. For the first time, it felt as though the gap between their worlds had truly begun to close. The ruins loomed large in the fading light, their intricate carvings and towering arches whispering of a long-lost culture. Elias, Marcus, and Leo stood in awe, trying to process the significance of what they had discovered. Calum watched them with quiet intensity, his large eyes reflecting the amber glow of the setting sun. "We need to document everything," Marcus said, adjusting the focus on his camera. "Every carving, every fragment. This place is extraordinary." Leo was already running his hands over the carvings on a nearby wall, his phonetic synthesizer recording Calum's soft, melodic hums in the background. "Look at these symbols," Leo said. "They're similar to the ones Calum drew in the dirt. They might tell a story or hold some kind of record." Elias joined him, studying the carvings closely. "If these walls could speak." "Calum, is this your people's history?" Calum nodded slowly, his hums deepening. He gestured toward a large central column covered in complex patterns. He began drawing in the dirt near it, sketching shapes and symbols that seemed to mimic the carvings above. Leo leaned closer to the column, carefully tracing the patterns with his fingers. It's intricate, almost like a map. Or maybe instructions. Instructions for what? Marcus asked, stepping over to join them. Elias tilted his head, considering. Calum, can you show us what this means? He pointed to the column, then gestured to the dirt where Calum had drawn. Calum's hums rose in tone, resonating deeply in the air around them. He gestured for them to step back, then placed one of his large hands on the column. Slowly, a faint glow emanated from the carvings, spreading outward like veins of light. The three men exchanged stunned glances. Is this some kind of technology? Marcus asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. It must be, Leo replied, scrambling to activate his recording equipment. But it's unlike anything we've seen before. The carvings are reacting to Calum's touch. Elias stepped forward cautiously. Calum, is this safe? Calum turned to him, his hums soft and reassuring. He then gestured for them to follow him as he moved toward another section of the ruins. There, he pointed to a recessed area in the stone that looked like a hollowed-out frame. Marcus shone a light into the hollow. It's empty. Was something meant to go here? Calum drew in the dirt again, this time sketching what looked like a sphere surrounded by radiating lines. Elias studied the drawing. A sphere? Could it be a power source or some kind of artifact? Leo was already analyzing the symbols on the walls. Whatever it is, it seems to be important. If this place is some kind of archive or sanctuary, it might hold the key to understanding Calum's people. Calum hummed again, this time more urgently. He gestured to the men, then back to the hollow. The message was clear. Something was missing, and it was crucial. All right, Elias said, turning to the others. We need to figure out what belongs here and why. This could be the key to unlocking everything Calum has been trying to show us. Marcus nodded. I'll start cataloging the carvings and taking detailed photos. Maybe there's a clue we've missed. Leo added, and I'll analyze the patterns further. If there's a connection between these symbols and Calum's vocalizations, we might be able to decipher more of their meaning. As the men worked, Calum watched silently, his hums fading into the background. Though his expression remained calm, there was a sense of urgency in his movements, as if the ruins held secrets that could not remain buried any longer. The day stretched into evening, the ruins bathed in the soft glow of their equipment. Finally, Elias stood back, wiping sweat from his brow. We've made progress, but there's still so much we don't understand. Leo agreed, packing up his tools. This place is more than we ever could have imagined. It's a window into Calum's world, and we're only beginning to open it. Marcus looked up from his camera. One thing's for sure, we can't stop now. Calum brought us here for a reason, and it's up to us to figure it out. Calum hummed softly, stepping closer to Elias and resting a massive hand on his shoulder. It was a gesture of trust and gratitude, one that spoke volumes without words. Elias smiled, placing a hand over Calum's. We're not giving up. We'll uncover the truth together. As they packed up for the night, the ruins seemed to hum faintly, as if alive with the echoes of a forgotten past. Calum led them back through the jungle, his large frame moving confidently despite the growing darkness. For Elias, Marcus, and Leo, the journey was no longer just about discovery. It was about connection, understanding, and the unshakable bond they were building with a creature who had once been left to die, but now had become their guide to a new world. The next morning arrived quickly, the trio awakening with a renewed sense of purpose. Elias, Marcus, and Leo reviewed the data they had collected, determined to understand the mystery Calum had revealed. The glow of the ruins and the empty hollow still lingered in their minds. Elias pored over his sketches of the column's carvings. It's like Calum's people left us a puzzle, and we're still missing pieces. That hollow, whatever fits there must be important. Leo nodded, studying his phonetic recordings. Calum's vocal patterns from yesterday might hold more clues. If we can match them to the carvings, we could figure out what's missing or what it's supposed to do. Marcus leaned back in his chair, looking at the sketches. What if the missing piece isn't here anymore? It could have been lost over time, or taken. Elias looked up at Calum, who was resting quietly nearby. Calum, do you think the piece we need is still here? He gestured to the hollow in his sketch, then made a sweeping motion around the ruins. Calum's hums turned low and thoughtful. He stood and walked over to Elias, studying the sketch before shaking his head slowly. Not here, Marcus interpreted. He's telling us it's gone? Leo rubbed his temples. If it's gone, then where? And how do we even begin to find it? Calum stepped forward again, this time drawing a detailed series of lines and symbols on the dirt floor. The patterns resembled a map, with marked points leading away from the ruins. Elias squatted beside him, tracing the lines with his finger. Are you saying we need to go here? He pointed to the final mark. Calum hummed in affirmation, tapping the end point with his claw. His gaze was steady, almost urgent. Marcus grabbed his gear. Looks like we're going on another trek. Good thing we're getting used to this jungle. Leo sighed but smiled. Adventure calls? Let me grab my equipment. They packed quickly, guided once again by Calum through the dense Zalorian forest. The trek was grueling. Thick vines and uneven terrain made every step a challenge, but Calum's steady pace encouraged them to keep moving. Marcus wiped his brow, glancing up at Calum's towering figure. This guy's got endless energy. How does he do it? Years of adapting to this environment, Elias replied, navigating around a fallen tree. We're just visitors in his world. Leo scanned the path ahead. Do you think we're close? It feels like we've been walking forever. Calum stopped suddenly, his hums growing louder. He pointed ahead to a clearing where the sunlight danced off a reflective surface. The three men followed his gaze, stepping into an open area dominated by a towering structure, a spire made of the same material as the ruins. Wow, Marcus whispered, aiming his camera. This is incredible. It looks untouched. Elias approached cautiously, noticing the base of the spire bore the same carvings they had seen at the ruins. This must be the place Calum's people intended us to find. But why? Leo examined the carvings, comparing them to his notes. It's another puzzle. Maybe the missing piece fits here too. Calum moved to the base of the spire, his large hand brushing over the carvings. He hummed, his tone growing sharper, more focused. Wait, Elias said, his eyes widening. What if the spire itself is the key? Calum, can it activate like the ruins did? Calum nodded, his hums shifting into a rhythmic sequence. He placed both hands on the spire, and slowly, the carvings began to glow. Here we go, Marcus said, stepping back with his camera. The spire lit up, lines of light racing to the top. The ground beneath them vibrated faintly, and a holographic image emerged from the spire's apex. It displayed a planet, surrounded by symbols and pathways. Leo's jaw dropped. Is that a star map? Elias nodded, mesmerized. It's showing us something. Maybe where Calum's people traveled, or where they planned to go. Calum gestured to the map, his hums conveying both sadness and hope. He pointed to one of the glowing symbols on the map, a distant star. That's where the missing piece is, Elias realized. It's not on this planet anymore. It's out there. Marcus lowered his camera, his voice serious. So, what do we do? We can't exactly leave Calum here and fly off to another star. Calum hummed again, softer this time, as if understanding their dilemma. He turned to the men, placing a massive hand on Elias's shoulder. Elias placed his hand over Calum's. We'll find a way. We're not abandoning you, Calum. We're in this together. Leo looked at the map, determination on his face. We document this. We analyze every detail. And then we figure out how to reach that star. Marcus nodded. For Calum and his people. As the spire's glow began to fade, the men stood in silence, the enormity of their discovery settling over them. This was not the end of their journey, but the beginning of something far greater. A mission to uncover the lost legacy of an entire civilization and ensure it wasn't forgotten. Calum hummed again, the sound filled with gratitude and resolve. Together, they turned back toward the forest, ready to face whatever came next.